Previously, I did a video talking about my favourite and frustrating toy buys of 2018, and that was a lot of fun, but it was meant to kick off a series of other toy-related videos, which didn't really happen until much later in the year. Mind you, my Instagram is full of posts talking about my near-daily bargain finds and additions to the collection, so if you're interested, I suggest you go check that out and click follow if you don't mind. In any case, I thought I'd do another one of these lists because I had some amazing finds in 2019, as well as some not so amazing ones. Because there were so many to choose from, I had to lay down a few ground rules. Stick to toys or high-end collectibles that at least resemble toys, and toys that I myself bought, kept, and remain in the collection. Now, they don't have to have been brand new to 2019, they just have to be brand new to my collection. Also, most of the prices I quote here are in Australian dollars, so keep that in mind. This video is happening a few weeks into January because, as always, my bargain hunting happens right up until the last day of the year. Alrighty, let's start on a low note so we can alternate and end on a high. 1/6 scale Donatello from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Mondo Tees. Well, this is awfully familiar territory. You'd think I'd learn by now, but whatever. Last year I bought the Leonardo from this range for cheap, and in that first video I talked about how I really liked it overall, but was let down by the QA issues given its exorbitant original price. Since then, Mondo, as well as a variety of other big retailers, have reduced their prices so it's a little easier to swallow, but not enough so. Anyway, I just happened to find an Aussie eBay seller getting rid of his collection, and so that's where Donnie here comes from. And if you're wondering why he's brown, that's because he's to match the original colour scheme from the 1980s figures by Playmates Toys. It was to encourage kids to want to buy more than one to complete the set, which they might not have done if they were all the same colour. And I guess that's kind of what's happening here now, eh? Oh. Donnie here does seem to be slightly better made than his brother Leo. After all, Leo was the first one released in the range and one of Mondo's first figures of its kind. But quality wasn't the issue here. The back of the bandana was missing. I contacted the seller and he replied a couple of days later saying he simply forgot to put it back in the box and would send it out immediately. It took 5 polite follow-up messages over the course of 8 weeks for it to finally arrive from interstate. Seller claimed he sent it the first time, but it probably just got lost. He then said he would send another one from a figure that he still had, which is really odd when you think about that. What puzzled me the most was that I had bought other figures from this guy at fantastic prices and with little to no hassle. So this particular sale really soured me a bit, but then again, you know, I have half the quartet now, so Eh? 1/6 scale News Hen by DreamEx. Okay, don't worry, I'll get to that. From an annoying Ninja Turtles acquisition to a really cool one. DreamEx released a line of 1/6 scale figures in their own original Ninja Turtle designs, and I didn't mind them. They looked kinda cool. Unfortunately for my money, they weren't exactly $400 worth of cool. They released the 4 Turtles as well as Casey Jones and the Shredder, but by the time they got to April O'Neil, and I may be slightly off on this, but apparently they lost the license. With the figure already manufactured and set for release, they did so without any of the TMNT names or branding on the boxes, and renamed her News Hen. I did not pay full price for this figure. Instead, I found an incomplete one on eBay from a Chinese seller for less than $50, and that was a no-brainer. I'll admit, had I paid the original retail price, I probably would have been disappointed with News Hen here, but she was such a bargain. We go from an okay, decent enough figure to a somewhat impressive April O'Neil. It's funny how that works. The iconic yellow jumpsuit is well made, covering the somewhat standard quality main body, and the few accessories she does come with are okay too, consisting of a microphone, video camera, and turtle communicator. I did have to recreate her press pass though, which was actually fun to do. While I could have done with alternate hands to help hold things, I was definitely not in need of the folding chair and swap out head, which depicted her gagged. The running joke of the original cartoon is that she was always a damsel in need of rescuing, because kids' cartoon of course, but it makes me cringe that anyone thought it was a good idea for collectors to try and recreate it. One of my favourite parts of this figure, although it's not quite 100% there is a sense that the designers were trying to emulate the likeness of Megan Fox, who was cast as April in those god-awful recent live-action Ninja Turtles films. Ironically, she was one of the only things that made sense in that movie. What's really cool is she seems to fit right in with the Mondo Turtles, more so than the ones that DreamEx made. Oh, geez. Now I just need to get the other two to complete the set. 1/6 scale Star Trek The Next Generation figures by Dragon Models. I knew exactly what I was getting into when I bought this bargain job lot on eBay. My curiosity simply got the better of me, especially as a Star Trek fan. Unfortunately, the two box figures were missing their phasers, which sucks, but that's not the reason it's made the frustrating list. These figures are rubbish. Okay, I'm being harsh, but let me explain. 2010 was the tail end of Star Trek's merchandising renaissance, led by Diamond Select's popular range of replicas and figures. That was also around the time in the upswing in popularity of high-end 1/6 scale figures, with the likes of Hot Toys pretty much leading the charge. So of course other companies wanted to chase that trend. Dragon Models are a Hong Kong-based company better known for their 12-inch military figures. Never heard of them? That's fair enough. They didn't do themselves any favours with this range either. Crappy proportions, average cut to the uniforms, and not even trying when it comes to recreating the likenesses of the characters. It makes the originally announced $200 retail price such a kick in the balls. I got all three of these for about $70, which is roughly how much one of these figures goes for online these days. I've also seen people try their luck in the hopes that some buyers will confuse these with Hot Toys and their pricey contemporaries. In all fairness, Dragon Models may not have had the rights to the likenesses in the first place, but if you look at their other licensed figures, there is a pattern to suggest that they were either incapable of such or simply didn't bother at all. When you compare the Dragon Models Picard to the awesome version made by Quantum Mechanics, the gulf between them is staggering. Even the Playmates release from 1998 is light years ahead of Dragon's efforts. I don't even know where to start with Worf. Ugh. 1/1 scale Covenant Needler replica from Halo by NECA Toys. I recall I was having a particular... let's move this out of the way. I recall I was having a particularly bad morning when, out of the blue, I received a message from a friend on Facebook. She was looking to declutter and thought, being a fellow Halo fan, I might be interested in this. This gargantuan 1/1 replica of the Covenant Needler, as seen in Halo, is a beast of a thing. It even dwarfs the plasma rifle laser tag replica from over a decade ago. When this was first released in conjunction with the 2015 launch of Halo 5, which was fine by the way, settle down, it was way too exorbitant a cost for me, especially for a prop that really didn't rank as a major must-have. But anyone who follows my weekly bargain hunting on Instagram knows I love a good bargain. Finally seeing up close, it's quite a fine replica, even if it did sort of skimp out on the paintwork, opting to recreate the honeycomb pattern with physical texture rather than pearlescent paint. It's beautiful when lit up, makes noises when you fire it, and the needles even animate and reload. When I got home after picking it up, I discovered that the mechanism for the needles was not working at 100%. This isn't anyone's fault apart from maybe the manufacturer, because this is a pretty common problem in this replica, of which 3,000 were made. And there's even a video on YouTube by someone who had the same issue. So I was able to glean some info from that to help fix this one and get it back into working order again. It's what I do. Because I paid so little, it didn't really bother me that much. Like I said, this is a 1/1 replica, and so it was made for characters over 2 meters or 7 feet tall. It's not really made for the average human, even if they are all armored up. 1/4 scale Wonder Woman by Nika Toys. I've spoken many times about my love for Nika's 1/4 scale range, and this figure too is incredible in quality and detail. I was even able to use it as reference for when I made her shield for a friend of mine. I bought it for cheap via Facebook Marketplace, complete with accessories and box, and it was described as perfect condition. It wasn't. When I got home, I noticed that there was glue residue on her ankles. At first I thought that indicated the figure had been repaired, but then I realised that this was actually a common practice amongst owners of the 1/4 scale range, or at least the idiots amongst them. These figures are actually quite heavy and are prone to toppling over, primarily because the ankles often don't have enough friction to support them. So some people, the aforementioned idiots, glue the ankles in place, and I hate that. Nothing else about this figure is wrong or broken or missing, but it's just so annoying to have something like this ruin my ability to pose the way I want to, which is the whole point of my preference for figures over statues. And the fact that I wasn't told about it is beyond annoying and frustrating. Star Trek: The Next Generation figures by Diamond Select. I was late to the party when it came to Art Asylum or Diamond Select's range of Star Trek collectibles. Despite being released in the mid-2000s, 2016 was when I finally stumbled upon figures at a couple of local collectibles places for surprisingly cheap. But that was the spark I needed. So I went hunting for my favourite characters, starting with Captain Picard of course, and although he was the original goal, slowly that expanded as I found more and more local retailers and individual sellers that had them for cheap, like $20 as opposed to $50 or more that many online sellers were asking. Of course, I went for the prop replicas and ships too, but that's for another time. One of the more annoying things about Diamond Select's method of releasing these figures is that many of them were either store or event exclusives or special mail-aways in limited quantities, and they can often end up rather pricey. Variant figures I can understand, like this Data in Command Red uniform from the episode Chain of Command. Bargain auction by the way, but I repeat myself. As well as this Lieutenant Picard in Science Blue from one of my favourite episodes, Tapestry. But then there was some strange attempt to have certain characters be exclusives, I reckon just as a way to piss off fans who wanted to complete the crew. This became especially annoying when I decided to collect the TNG crew as they appeared in Nemesis. Nemesis was garbage by the way, so I prefer to reference them as being from First Contact, even if only 2 of them are technically so. There were 2 versions of Movie Data. Proper Nemesis release that was based off of 3D scan data, and a legit First Contact release. The latter was a bastard to find for cheap because the few times he would pop up, sellers wanted close to $100 for him. Me being me, I found cheap loose ones for a fraction of that cost. Twice! Even harder to find was the exclusive LaForge, often going for $150 new in pack. But sometimes waiting for that bargain can be rewarding and easy on the bank account too, because Geordie was part of an interstate job lot for less than $50. To help finish the TV series crew, one of the last figures I bought was a hard to find mint in pack Barclay that a seller on Gumtree had for $15. The most interesting find was from the beginning of 2019 when I found this loose and complete Q from a job lot of random accessories left over when the Gumtree seller sold off the actual figures. The reason this makes the list is because 2019 is when I finally completed the TNG set. As far as I know, at least. Transformers Generation 1 Dirge and Ultra Magnus by Hasbro. I'm including these two together mainly because they're both Transformers, but also they possibly represent similar problems despite being separate transactions. The vintage 1985 Generation 1 Dirge was won in an eBay auction for cheap, and it was advertised as having most of its accessories, even the often hard to find landing gear as seen in the photo. But wouldn't you know it, the landing gear was missing when it arrived. Unfortunately, the seller ignored my follow-up messages and seems to have pissed off quite a few other buyers too, and later disappeared altogether. Frustratingly, the seller apparently lives only an hour away from me, but I don't know where exactly. It's made all the more odd that the other auction I won from the same person was trouble-free. I spotted this G1 Ultra Magnus at one of the toy fairs, and the seller specifically told me this was a genuine vintage Magnus. just with the missiles and launchers from a reissue version. That sounded a tad suspicious, so I ignored it at first, but by the end of the day things were being discounted and I was buying something else from them anyway, so I decided to get this too, and later a much more knowledgeable Transformers friend confirmed that the entire toy was indeed a reissue. This one has rubber tyres, painted faces, chrome where it needs to, and is made in Japan. This incomplete one has plastic tyres, no paint on the faces, missing some chrome parts, and says made in Macau. That doesn't actually matter apparently, it's more to do with which factory it came from during that era. The release and re-release history of certain Transformers toys, especially with all their running changes, makes this so frustrating. Due to the original molds being used, the original dates are going to be on there. I don't have a problem with buying reissues. I just like to know that's what it is when I'm handing over my cash. I want to be told the truth. Benefit of the doubt, maybe the person who sold me this was told the same thing. But then why would you put distinctly reissue parts on a genuine original? Call it a pet hate if you will. I don't like to be lied to, and the problem is that jerks like me will not keep our mouths shut about such BS. Ghostbusters Firehouse playset by Kenner Toys. I loved the Ghostbusters cartoon when I was little, and even had a small selection of the original toys. But upon thinking on it, I'm surprised it never stayed with me the same way the original 1984 movie did. That film is an all-time classic. What reignited my interest in these toys was the random discovery of the chassis of the vintage Ecto-1 toy at a Savers one night 4 years ago, and it was only $5, which then led me into finding the missing pieces for it. I browse eBay pretty much every night. I find it meditative, and I have a standard list of saved searches, but only every now and then do I, on a whim, search for Ghostbusters toys. One night I thought, what the hell, let's look for this Firehouse. Previously, I had only ever seen this thing in those little catalogues that come with the toys advertising the company's other range of products. I had never seen one up close before. I did almost get to see one or buy one. Local Gumtree seller had one for sale, but they wouldn't bloody respond to their messages. I'll admit, it took quite a few months and a couple of failed attempts, but I finally won an auction for less than $50, and it was only missing one piece. I love this playset, and being from 1987, I love how simple it is. There's not too many gimmicks or noise, nor are there too many moving parts, and it very much suits the figures and vehicles it's meant to accommodate. But apart from that, honestly, I'm not sure what else to say about it. Overall, there is something so satisfying in having this in front of me, having it in my collection. Before we get to my number one frustrating toy, let's look at a few dishonourable mentions. Oh, yeah, fortunately not a very long list. It's been a pretty bloody good year of toy collecting, come to think of it. By the way, you'll also notice that most of my frustrating candidates, bar one, are less to do with the quality of a toy and more to do with the negative buying experience. Most of the time I'm fine with a bad or average toy if I spend very little on it, but one of the more frustrating parts of the hobby has to do with the, is there another word for like a toy scalper? Marvel Legends and Black Series figures by Hasbro Toys. These figures are actually quite good and have improved over the years with better designs, more detail, and striking likenesses thanks to 3D scanning and rapid prototyping. But I spent ages avoiding these sorts of figures because I didn't want to fall down this particular black hole of collecting. Then in 2018, some retailers were discounting old stock to the point of giving them away. And of course, I can't resist a bargain, especially characters for films that I really liked. Ragnarok, Civil War, and of course Endgame. When I spotted complete Builder figures at toy fairs going for half the online prices, I thought, Why the hell not? At one point, Toy World was selling Black Series figures for only $10 each, and collectors and resellers alike were grabbing armfuls of them. I just wanted to get to my favourites before the scabs ran off with them, all to flip for profit. See, that in and of itself isn't the issue. If they found them for cheap and resell it at a reasonable price, that's fine. My main gripe, what pisses me off the most about this, is the economy that surrounds such toys. When a popular figure sells out quickly, the scabs who get a hold of said popular figure then list them for sale at highly inflated prices because there's such a high demand for it. Yeah, sure, we see people pay ridiculous prices at auction, but there are times where there isn't even an auction to set a precedent or a going rate. Sellers will try their luck asking for twice or 3 times the recommended retail, preying on the stupid. What's really shitty about this is they'll do it within a couple of weeks of release. The Endgame Pepper Potts rescue figure was only a month old when listings started popping up, going for $70 before postage. The Worthy Captain America figure, also from Endgame, was a store exclusive in the US, and there were sellers trying to gouge collectors asking for well over $100 for it. Made all the worse because people outside the US assumed it wasn't going to be made available in their country. Until it was. That's how I got mine. The Mandalorian figure was barely 2 weeks old when listings for it popped up on eBay for exorbitant prices. Now some wankers are wanting 3 times the original price. What makes that example hilarious is that that particular Mando fig is being re-released over the next few months depending on which retailer you go to for the original $40 price tag. I'd understand if these were old toys, long sold out, toys that were made in such small, limited quantities, but these are mass-produced and available all around the world, and some of these scabs are preying on those with more money than sense. What's really messed up about all this? It's considered normal. We fucking let it happen. As I said before, I had a pretty good year of toy hunting, so I had great difficulty in narrowing down my list to just 5 favourites. And an honourable mentions list, that was too long as well, and just ended up sounding like me bragging about how cheap I got all these toys, which I do on Instagram anyway. Having said that, here's a list of honourable mentions that will undoubtedly sound like me bragging about how cheap I got these for, because screw it. Star Trek The Next Generation USS Enterprise Bridge Playset by Playmates Toys. Hello up there. If there ever was a contender for Grail item, then I reckon this might be it. There we were on the Sunday night after the Mega Toy Fair here in Adelaide. We had just finished dinner. I decided to check my messages on my phone, and somehow I ended up on Facebook Marketplace because, you know, spending the last 2 days throwing cash at other people in exchange for plastic crap wasn't enough. Go watch that video, by the way, I would really appreciate it. Anyway, that's where I spotted a bargain listing for a couple of Star Trek TNG playsets, the Enterprise Bridge and a Transporter set. Now, I only wanted the Bridge playset because previously I had already found a Transporter complete and with box at the Brighton Market for only $15. Fortunately, I was able to haggle for a lower price, and the entire transaction happened within half an hour on my way home from dinner. The reason this takes out the top spot is because I think it's absolutely beautiful. Not only that, it lights up and plays sounds from the TV show. I love it. While it was never going to be 100% accurate to the real production set, I'm still amazed at how faithful it is in the broad strokes. And that often doesn't happen with these things. The fidelity is pretty much the reason it's such a massive playset. I feel as though the designers at Playmates knew what nerds are like and wanted to avoid the deluge of, well, actually... Even a couple of the walls can be removed as if you were on a filming set. This is another toy that I had never seen in person until recently because I don't recall seeing a lot of Trek toys being sold locally back in the 90s. But then again, that could just be the stores that I frequented as a teen. As a longtime Star Trek fan, this was certainly one item that I coveted at one point. That was until I kind of gave up any hope of being able to afford it by the time I had my own disposable income. Like, even if I found a reasonably priced one, the postage would just kill me. Finally having this, as well as the way I found it, it feels good. That was exhausting. And a lot to get through, but like I said, 2019 was a fruitful year in collecting for me, despite everything else going on in the world, and that's just the stuff that falls under the toy criteria. I hope you enjoyed this. Maybe it rustled up a few old memories for you. I mean, that's half the fun of collecting and going on toy hunts. The nostalgia can be rather intoxicating. By the way, I'm hoping to have more of these in future, and so, keep an eye out for those. If you did enjoy this video, please do all the usual like, share, and subscribe, as that will help me out a lot. And also, please consider supporting me by dropping a few dollars at my tip jar at coffee.com. That would really help me out, and I very much appreciate the support. Anyway, thanks again, and here's to a most excellent 2020.